There are stories. There's one story of someone who was a medium who was visiting an old hospital and came across a child in a bed, in an old hospital bed, and that child had been there for 100 years because mom had said, "Oh, I'll be back. I'll be back. Wait for me," and the child is still waiting. So
Mhm.
don't ever say that to a child. Let people go and be happy for them.
Today we're talking with NDE author and researcher Roberta Grimes. Welcome in, Roberta. I'm so happy to be talking with you today.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much.
I have done so much fascinating research into your background, your history, the work that you're doing now. I just feel like this is such a big story that you have to tell based on your decades of research that I've decided, and I hope you'll agree, that we're going to do part one today. And then we'll come back in a few weeks with part two because I don't want to gloss over so much information that I think is so important for humanity right now. It's just really for me the crux of what we're doing on the planet. So today I'd like to kind of start with your history, and it all began when you were 8 years old and really goes on from there in a very significant way. So can you kind of tell us what happened when you were 8 that sort of kicked this whole thing off?
Yeah, when I was 8, I woke up I think it was about 4 in the morning and knew there was no God. And when you're a good little Christian child and you wake up in the morning and God isn't there and God always was before, it's terrifying. So I'm lying there and I'm too afraid even to go run to Mama. I mean, what comfort is there when there's no God? And then there was a bright flash of light in the room, brilliant, like magnesium burning. And a voice said, "You wouldn't know what it is to have me if you didn't know what it is to be without me. I will never leave you again." And God was back. So I thought, oh, that's handy. If you forget there's a God, they remind you. And I went right back to sleep. But when people have this kind of experience, they never tell anyone about it. I just assumed I was going to learn what that was sometime later on in life. When you're a small child, that's what you assume. But I never asked a question, so I never got an answer. So I ended up majoring in early Christian history in college. Never got a question. Never asked a question, never got an answer. And therefore, right after college, before I went to law school, I started researching what I could find of early communications from the dead. And I couldn't find much until after Raymond Moody published Life After Life in 1976.
That's really when we started getting information and it started the floodgates opening.
Well, the thing is, what it did was to help start people investigating early communications from the actual dead. What I researched was not NDEs, it was communications that had been completed at the end of the 19th, early 20th century. And these were communications that were received through deep trance mediums. The
So was
medium,
this before Seth and before Edgar Casey?
yeah, this was late 19th, early 20th century.
Okay.
And so these were the great deep trance mediums. I can't even off the top of my head recall their names now. If you went back in the 1960s, if you went to old bookstores, you could find books that had been written by people around the turn of the century who were sure they were doing cutting edge research that was going to be researched by scientists. Because, right, and you roll your eyes
You'd
because
think.
because this was true cutting edge research into what should have been science. These were genuine dead people talking through people who had died and were talking. This was back when, before electric lights, there were mediums that we don't have today. they would withdraw from their bodies, their controls would take over their bodies, and they would have your mother, your grandmother right in the room there with them, who would talk to you as not possible now. We would get great information about what was going on. Impossible, impossible to do today. And I read everything I could get my hands on. I still have those old books. And I spent 2 years doing this research in the late 70s, early 80s. And when I came up for air, I had read 200 some odd communications from genuine dead people. You can't do it now. You can't get these communications now, but they were all real. They had been received in the southern England, eastern United States, New York, Boston. Those three separate areas through these genuine, Gladys Osborne Leonard was one of them, genuine deep trance mediums. Can't find this stuff now, can't get it, not possible. And I was the world's biggest skeptic. I thought, nah, it can't be real. But at the end of that time, I realized every single one of those mediums, 200 some odd communications, they all were talking about same physics, same process, same details, same atmosphere, same, surroundings, same everything. If you were going to take a trip to some exotic climb and you wanted to know all about that exotic climb, you would find every possible communication you could find from someone who had been there, right? And if they were all saying the same things, you would say, okay, I know what it's like there. So after 2 years of reading all these books, I closed the last one. I said, okay, it's real and I know all about it. This is before NDEs, it's before everybody else. And I still have those books, and I tell you, it is real because I have not allowed anything to pollute what I know from these communications. That's it.
Now, I've heard you say in other interviews that a actual death experience is so different than an NDE, a near-death
Yes,
experience.
absolutely
I
right.
don't think most people understand that or are aware of that just because we don't have a lot of information. Like you said,
Yes, because it
it's
all came
buried.
right. The thing is, a real death experience is very similar across the board. NDEs are not. They're very different because every NDE by definition, the body is usually in distress. It's temporarily uninhabitable. They're going through they're in a coma, they were knocked out of their body because of a car crash or something has happened. And so they're out of body experiences, right? And usually they happen either in the astral plane or in the room. All NDEs are created, the experiences are created by the guide of the person who is having that experience. And usually they're tailored to what the person who is going through the experience needs. Maybe Jesus appears, maybe God appears, which God never appears physically in real life. Um, who knows? Maybe it's loved ones or whatever. But they're an experience. It's possible for hell to appear in a near-death experience. It's possible for heaven to appear in a near-death experience. It's possible for them to happen in the astral plane. It's possible for them to happen. It's possible for distance viewing to happen in a near-death experience. Those things all can happen in a near-death experience. I've studied them extensively, as you said in your introduction. But in an actual death, they are remarkably consistent.
Can you walk us through what that process is then? I have not read the books that you're referring to, so I don't have this information. I'm sure if I don't, most of us don't. So I'd love to hear
Okay,
you kind of.
in actual death, very, very similar. A few days before an actual death, and usually these are a planned death. There are three, we usually plan before death, before we're born, into the life process. We also plan three exit points. And when our higher consciousness has chosen our exit point, we're usually not aware of it, but about a year before we're going to die, we usually start to plan our exit. If it's an adult exit point that we're planning, and sometimes it's a child exit point, usually for an advanced being, we'll plan to take a child exit point, and that's as a gift to our parents. Some gifts are not fun to receive, and one of them is it had to have a child die, but it's a gift to the adults in our lives. But let's assume we're planning to die either at midlife or in old age. We plan to wrap up our lives. And very often at a celebration of a life, people will talk about, gee, a month before he died, he told me all the passwords. I'm surprised about that. Don't be. It's very common. Um, but if, let's say we're dying of cancer or old age or something, as we wrap up our lives, we'll be doing those things. But nevertheless, then let's say we were very sick. Within a few days before we die, we start to get better. And doctors will notice that and they will say that's a sign actually that death is approaching, that we seem to get better within a day or two, sometimes we'll get very much better. And that what's called terminal lucidity is a sign usually that death is a day or two away. Why does that happen? Terminal lucidity, suddenly people who have been, sometimes their brain has been totally fried, and yet they'll suddenly sit up in bed and start talking. Why is that possible? If doctors would say, hey, your mother is her brain is totally fried. She's got Alzheimer's, but she can sit up and talk with you. Well, that's because the inner body, which is leaving, which is your real mom, let's say, how can I put this? We're built, you've seen Russian dolls, nested dolls. That's how you're actually built. Your outer body, which is staying here, is matter, but your inner body is energy, and that's not affected by the fact that your brain is fried. You're the part that's staying. And as it starts to separate that inner body, which is not affected by the Alzheimer's at all, you're able to sort of sit up and talk to people, which is a lovely gift. Talk to mom when she suddenly seems better, because that's a last little goodbye situation. You get to talk, and it's a wonderful thing. But as we get closer and closer, people who are awake during that very last part of that time will feel their themselves sort of gathering in their chest. But even before that time, they'll very often start noticing that in the upper corners of the room, people that they loved in life will appear. They'll notice mom appear in the upper corners. I don't know why they appear in the upper corners of the room, but they do, very typically. And they'll start talking in their minds to the people that appear in the upper corners of the room. It's very arresting because those people look perfectly young and healthy. Mom may have died at 97, but there she is looking 30 years old, and that's very exciting. Very, very common for this to happen. And usually they'll stop talking once they see mom to appear in the upper corner of the room, or could be even a pet they'll see appear in the upper corners of the room. They'll usually stop talking to the living, not always though. Sometimes it turns out to be a party, especially if there are people around the bed who are somewhat psychic. They'll see them too, and people will start talking, and sometimes talking aloud with the people in the upper corners of the room. None of this is scary. All of this is exciting and beautiful and love-filled. Many times people don't want to transition when their loved ones are in the room. And that's something that people around the bed don't like. They wish, why won't mom leave while I'm here? Well, they're worried about that. They don't want their mother, their children to worry about mom or to try to hold on to mom. So if you think your mother is holding on to life or the person that you love is holding on to life, tell them that it's okay for them to go, and maybe leave the room and say, it's okay to go while I'm gone. Give
They
people
always sneak out when you're not there. You can go to the bathroom for 5 minutes.
very common for them to sneak out when you're not there.
And I
Let
think
them
it's
go.
such a sign of love. I mean, they just really want to be gentle with their family members.
It's also a very private thing to leave. I mean, the thing about death is that it's something, you've never done it before. You don't know whether it's a private thing. You don't know whether you're going to make funny noises when you leave. You don't know whether it's going to be an embarrassing thing to do. And you kind of many people want to die alone. And if that's what your loved one wants to do is to die alone, let them do that. It's okay. I mean, I could tell you terrible stories of people who have said to children, especially, I have to go now. Don't go. Wait for me. I will be back. Things like that. Don't ever say that to a child. There are stories. There's one story of someone who was a medium who was visiting an old hospital and came across a child in a bed, in an old hospital bed, and that child had been there for 100 years because mom had said, "Oh, I'll be back. Wait for me," and the child is still waiting. So
Mhm.
don't ever say that to a child. Let people go and be happy for them. And
So I want to talk about, and I have seen this with family members, this expanded awareness. In other words, they're seeing people in the room.
oh
They're
yes, oh
they're
yes.
they're seeing things that I'm not seeing. Based on your research, how is that happening? And is the consciousness expanding before the energy body actually leaves the physical body?
Yeah.
So we're kind of in an in-between place. Is that how you
Oh,
see it?
commonly. Yes, commonly. Not all the time. It's different, but many times, for even sometimes for days, they'll be seeing people who you think are not there.
Yeah.
And those people will sometimes start as much as a week ahead visiting them.
Yeah,
And sometimes it's not until they're ready to leave the room. It's very, very idiosyncratic. It's different for
yeah.
everybody.
Okay. So we've got everybody upset now talking about dying. So let's talk
But
about
it's a joyous time.
it. It's
Such
like
a
that.
joyous time.
That's how I see it, Roberta, because this right here, this is just a school. We incarnate into these bodies to learn lessons. The real existence is on the other side. So can you kind of walk us through the magic that happens once we transition out of the physical form?
Yeah, well, yes, because what happens is we gather usually in the chest, and then people will see a mist rise from the body. Many people see that mist, and then it seems to disappear. And what happens is its vibration is rising very quickly once it leaves the body. And when it seems to disappear, it hasn't disappeared at all. It's just gone above what most people in the room can see. It's vibrating much higher. And what you don't see is the big reunion that happens in the room because those people who were in the corners of the room come down and big happy reunion, hugging, kissing. Everybody's young, everybody looks beautiful. The person who was that mist forms into a body, and that body, you know, is not clothed. They go, "Oh," and immediately they think clothing and they're clothed. Everybody is happy. What's important is to immediately leave that room because as soon as you're out of your body, the silver cord that had connected your body to your astral body, to your energy body, starts to fray. Now that silver cord, and the silver cord term comes from the Bible. It's a very old term. That's what connected you when people have out of body experiences. It connects you when people have NDEs. That silver cord always connects you. If it severs, it cannot be reattached. It starts to fray and it pretty quickly breaks. When it breaks, the body in the bed is dead, cannot ever be reactivated.
Reanimated. Okay, so here's the funny thing I think about with the silver cord, Roberta, because I'm a mom, that sort of thing. I'm thinking, and I've talked to people who have had experiences where they see the silver cords around the planet, that it's a thing. And I'm thinking, why don't they get tangled up?
I don't know, but
Like the vacuum
that's a
cord.
question no one's ever asked me. Why don't we see all these cords get tangled? I
I
have
mean,
no
if you've
idea.
owned a vacuum, you know cord. You know the cord problem.
I
And
don't know. That's such a great question.
well, they must not. I mean, it's just so
They
funny to me
don't.
because
They
we
don't. They
think from
don't.
our physical, perception of reality. It's like that's where my mind goes.
What a
So
funny question. I don't have any idea why
so
it's
the
so
chord phrase,
natural.
and we're off on a new adventure. So
Yeah.
based on the information that you have from those older channeling sessions, what are our options once we transition out of the body and it's not an NDE, we're not coming back?
Well, you have every option in the world because you're free as a birdlet, but you should not do anything except immediately go with the people who have come to get you. Your loved ones, your guides. Sometimes there's an angel in the room. Jesus might be there. Anybody who's come to get you, they're there to go with you, raise your vibration as rapidly as possible. And what's great is the place you're going is right where you are now. So you don't have to go very far. You just have to get out of that room because your urge is going to be to try to comfort people around the bed. And if you are one of the people around the bed, don't do anything stupid because what you can do is it would be stupid is to say, oh no, she's dead. Oh no, he's dead. Oh, look for a pulse. Oh, how terrible. Because then you are going to alarm the person who has just left the body. They're going to want to comfort you and say, oh no, I'm right here. And what that will do will lower their vibration. And they will then try to comfort you, which will lower, will, suddenly they will no longer be able to perceive the people who come for you. That's how we make ghosts. And if you distract them at the wrong time, and they can no longer see the people who've come for them and feel the people who have come for them, you'll make a ghost out of your mom. You don't want to do that. So instead, say goodbye, mom, and sit there for at least half an hour. Let them get out of the room. When the room clears out, and you may well be able to feel that it has cleared out, then, cross their hands or whatever you do, let them take the body out.
Yeah. So the energy body has now left the physical body. Do you have any information of what happens after that? Do they stop at the astral plane to make their decisions about what's next? What's the journey like?
Well, the journey is in the same place, but what all they're doing is raising their vibration. And this is what it feels like. It feels like going through a fog, but only in the same place. If you look back at the room as you're going with them through this fog, it will look as if the room has become vague and vapory, as you kind of would imagine where you're going is vague and vapory, but you're going through a fog. Usually that's what it's described as. And then the fog clears, even though you're not going anywhere. Fog clears, and you're in a beautiful place. Beautiful. The Summerland levels 3, 4, and 5, are gorgeous. The Vikings called it the Summerland, as they would, because where they were was kind of cold, dark, and snowy and stuff. And to them, it looked like literal heaven, which it does look like. Love filled, beautiful. And that's where you're heading. Level 3 is usually where we enter. Even no matter how high our vibration is, that's usually where we enter. But the easiest way to envision what's actually happening is to think of your mind as a television set. Right now, all of us are tuned to level Earth, level material, level universe, level matter, level whatever you want to think of this level is. Our minds are tuned to this level and to this body on this level. And when we die, we just tune slightly higher to the lowest, nice, non material level, which is level 3 of the astral plane. That's it. It's right in the same place, just as with your television set, the lowest next sort of level. Let's say you're tuned to level, TV channel 3. Call it 2. Call it 2. That's how close they are. You're tuned to TV channel 2, and you tune now to TV channel 3, and you pick up a new channel, and it's beautiful. It's right in the same place. It's in your TV. That's exactly what dying is. That's how close they are.
Yeah. So let me ask you, let's go back to when you were 8 and you had that experience. Were you temporarily in a little higher level, or you think that they brought that experience into this level for you to be able to perceive it?
I didn't go anywhere. I was right in my bedroom. I mean, I saw the light on all my toys. I could remember that room vividly just by, and this is quite a few years later. I'm obviously very young still, as you can see, but no,
Yes, we all
it feels
are.
as like it just happened yesterday, and it
I
happened many years ago.
And that is something that is unique. I have found in my own experience and from other people I've spoken with, when you have an experience like what you had when you were 8, you
Extraordinary.
never forget it. And you can recall that.
It remains immediate. But
Mhm.
there are a couple of experiences like that in the Bible that are very prominent. For example, Moses with his burning bush, same experience. People who are not familiar with the Bible, it happened 3,000 years ago. Moses was walking along and there was a burning bush and he stepped aside to look at it. And a voice out of it said, "Take your shoes off your feet because the place where you're standing is holy ground." And Jesus, as soon after he died, he was being persecuted by Saul, and Saul was on the road to Damascus to go pick up more Christians to persecute even further. And there was a flash of light, and a voice from out of it, with the voice of Jesus, said, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" And it knocked him off his horse and blinded him actually temporarily. Same experience. They're rarer. They're much, much more rare than our near-death experiences, but experiences of light do happen. I've actually met a couple of people who've had them in this lifetime.
Yeah. Can you remember or recall how you felt physically? Did your body feel more lighter,
It
happier?
didn't affect my body at all.
Okay.
It was just a blinding flash, and then this voice. I remember the voice very vividly. I would recognize it if I heard it again. But and I didn't even know it ever happened to anybody else until I was 43 years old and my father was dying. And I called my mother as I was driving. I would go every day to be with her. And she was, one day I was driving and called her and she was all excited, which is a little odd for someone whose husband of many years is dying. I said, "What happened?" And she said, "Oh, I can't tell you, but it was wonderful." I said, "You saw a light, didn't you?" "Oh, I can't. How did you know that?" And she had seen a light and a voice.
Oh,
First time I ever heard anybody else have that experience.
how wonderful for her.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
a little amazing for me.
Yeah.
It's a very, very rare thing that
Mm,
very few people have it happen to them.
yeah. So I want to talk about now what we're doing here on Earth because what I think about is because Earth is one of the toughest schools, would you say? The toughest
It's
incarnations.
very tough, especially since they don't give you instructions. When you go there, this is what you're supposed to do, and then you come back, you'll be all done. They don't tell you
They
anything.
don't tell you anything. We come in with amnesia. Here's what I want to know, Roberta. How do they talk us into doing it? It's like it's
They
so
make us
gorgeous there.
think.
It's so challenging here. I think it's like I always say to my guides, we overcommitted. Overcommitted.
But the problem is that we think it from there it looks easy
It does.
and it
Yeah.
looks quick. And it's the only way, really, to make much spiritual progress till you hit close to top of level 5. And so we don't really have much choice. And we're having so much fun there, and then we exhaust the fun, and we see how much more we could do if only we had a little more spiritual growth. So we just don't have a choice. And the lies that we're told by our religions, and the reason Jesus came was not, I mean, it says right in the Bible that God doesn't judge us. So we know that what the church tells us is a complete lie. Jesus didn't have to die for our sins because God doesn't judge us. So what's the point of the whole business? But Jesus came to tell us, hey guys, this is the real reason you're here, and this is how you really ace this lifetime. So you don't have to come back. It's all right there. But that's why he came. He came to tell us how to ace this lifetime because he didn't want to watch us flounder through lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. He taught us, he came to tell us how to make it work.
Yeah. And you just stepped right into a can of worms that I think is so important. And that is when you were explaining what happens in actual death experiences as opposed to a near-death experience. I look at near-death experiences as lessons or breadcrumbs for the experiencer as well as the world. So a lot of experiencers come back and then will share their story, which I think are clues. Those are breadcrumbs for the rest of us, lessons that we can learn. You researched for several years with old texts on what happens in actual death experiences. Here's my question to you, and I was thinking it the whole time. Why has that information been suppressed? Why is this not common knowledge? Why is this not something that we learn when we're little? That this is a school, we're learning lessons, it's temporary, this is not who you really are. Why is all of this known by so little and then vilified, the information vilified by, I don't know who, the masses or the powers that be? Can you talk about that? It's like, why did you have to go research? And if you were able to uncover it in a few years, it's available knowledge. Why don't we all know this?
Because there is no authority in whose interest it is to give us this information. Think about it. The church would not exist if it gave out this information broadly. We wouldn't need the church. We do not need the church. The church did not come from Jesus. The church came along 300 years after Jesus' ascension. It uses his name, but does not give us his teachings. It's based in fear, not in love. It has to use that fear in order to keep our fannies in the pews and in order to keep our money coming. Without the fear, it would have died a long time ago of its
Yeah.
own negativity.
And
I
I
gotta
also
say that. I have to say that as someone who for 50 years was the most devout Christian you could possibly imagine. It pains me to know the truth and to say the truth about Christianity.
so
Jesus moment.
how did you come to that for 50 years if you identified with the church? I mean, that's, Roberta, that's huge. That's a lifetime, a foundational existence for a human, 50 years. How did you come to this? And then the next question is going to be, how do you integrate that without completely falling apart?
Jesus said, who do you love more, me or the church? And I had to say, I love you more. He said, then come and follow me. And he is saying that to every Christian now. Who do you love more? Because you can't have both. You cannot have Jesus and Christianity. Impossible.
So, can you outline for those who are confused right now and who maybe are in a faith that they've been in for a while, can you outline where the contradictions are? I know that you said, fear, and my personal opinion is that it has a lot to do with control and the intertwining of the church and governments. It's a great way to control people. Where for you are the biggest conflicts that you see are just in direct contradiction to the real teachings of Jesus?
Everything is. I mean, Jesus taught love. Christianity does not teach love. Jesus taught forgiveness. If Jesus is teaching forgiveness, then why can't God forgive us? In fact, Jesus says God does forgive us. Then why does God need a blood sacrifice of his own child? I mean, the church is full of massive contradictions that cannot be reconciled. Those contradictions all come from the Roman Emperor Constantine. The more you dig into Christianity, the more you cannot reconcile the differences between Christianity and Jesus and his teachings. There is no what you cannot wonder why the church would not allow Christianity to the Bible to be translated out of Latin into any modern language for 1,500 years. They wouldn't allow people even to read the Bible, and you could see why. Because if you read the Bible and you read Jesus's teachings, you say, "What? Why does the Christianity teach such awful things when Jesus was teaching something else altogether?" It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Thank you for that. That's beautifully put. So we're looking at, and we're going to dive into something that's might be controversial. I don't know what your position is on this. We didn't discuss it before we got on. I know that there's a lot of research. Mauro Bellini, for one. Is it B? How do you pronounce his last name? Gods of the
Oh, I
Bible.
don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, all right. I'll send you a link to some
Okay.
information about it. But there is research right now coming out that is saying the same thing that you're saying, that there is really not a connection between the true teachings of Jesus and what we've seen in organized religion. And I've had some people say, or I've heard other people say, it really is the end of the Abrahamic religions because all the information that's being uncovered, and there's been some books written about the translations of the Bible that were mistranslated. And my response is when people say it's the end of the Abrahamic religions, I'm like, are you kidding me? It's going to take 100 years because humans seem to be very easily manipulated and a little bit gullible. And when they find something that they can attach themselves to that seem like instructions or something that kind of absolves them of personal responsibility, they really want to stay there and hang on to that. So I'm curious where you are with why is humanity in this situation where instead of being centered, filled with self-love, focused on personal responsibility and being filled with integrity, compassion, forgiveness, what happened to humans that we're not there right now?
Well, I know what happened with Christianity. I mean, that the Romans simply decided they were going to take over the movement, which was millions strong at that point, 300 years. It was as old as the United States is now from its founding. And they just took it over and killed off every one of the many sort of sub movements within this thriving, Jesus called it the way, thriving movement, and they killed off all the other aspects of it. And what Jesus has decided to do is to go back to the way and start it over. And that's what I'm trying to help him do.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and move into that right now. Your relationship with Jesus, the information that you're bringing out about Jesus. And we can go a little long today and sort of talk about. So, how I know you have a website now, the teachingsbyjesus.com.
Uh-huh.
Beautiful, beautiful site. How did that start? Where's that information coming from? Are you channeling Jesus? Is this a channel of Jesus? Have you gone back to source material? Give us the whole story of that, Roberta.
Oh, the whole story is even stranger than you can imagine.
Okay.
Well, according to my spirit guide, I met him, I guess it was right around the year 100 and 150 when I'm always male in all my lifetimes. When I was in a massacre and he was in a massacre too, and he took me back to meet with Jesus. Jesus, like, I mean, I would assume that Jesus needed a backstory. He has a backstory, and he was originally in the Neolithic. He had an older brother and a younger brother, and before he was ascended, and they were all princes, and they were massacred. Everybody gets massacred. I don't know. What a depressing species we are.
At least right now.
Well,
It's
no, we
it's
always have been. We're always killing each other.
it's pretty rough and tumble here on this planet.
Yes. But anyway, so his relationship with my spirit guide goes back, Jesus's does, to when they were brothers in the Neolithic. and they are very, very close still. And so apparently, I'm part of Jesus's friend group as well now because of the fact that I met Thomas 100 years ago. I'm sketchy on this history, but anyway,
Is Thomas your spirit guide?
yes.
Okay.
I don't know how much of this is necessary and how much of it is not. But anyway, so the reason Thomas it told me to call him Thomas is that ever since Jesus so 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 anyway, so Jesus then became ascended like 6,000 years ago, figured out that this was a raw deal that people were getting because he was naturally such an extremely loving being. He got ascended. His brothers didn't. Other people were not becoming ascended. This is an extremely raw deal humankind is getting. So he decided he was going to teach people how to, rig the game and everybody gets ascended. And eventually that's what he did. He was born from out of the Godhead, and you know that he became Jesus. And apparently he really did a good job of that, as we know, with the story of Jesus. And Thomas has never continued and become ascended. He has basically been one of Jesus's primary servants ever since. And Thomas, in the course of lifetimes of service to Jesus, and the reason he told me to call him Thomas he didn't want to come out to me as my spirit guide, but he did because I was supposed to in this lifetime do perform some services for Jesus, which I then refused to do. So being a brat, apparently that's one of his favorite words for me. So he came out to me and told me that I had to do these things. And in order to do that, he had to tell me who he had been in one of his most recent lifetimes, which was Thomas Jefferson, again in service to Jesus. So he had done that lifetime, and that's on a whole nother story. But nevertheless, all of this is very complicated. I then wrote Liberating Jesus, and I've also written the fun books, that series,
Mhm.
which I was supposed to write, and The Fun of Loving Jesus, which is supposed to be a handbook for this next stage of what Jesus is trying to do, which is to reestablish the way of Jesus, going back to before there ever was a Christianity. What Jesus wants us to do is to pretend Christianity never happened.
Really?
The whole thing was a mistake, is the wrong word, detour. We just forget about it. I mean, I don't know how you do that, but he's the boss. So we're going to try.
So you have developed this website, The Teachings by Jesus.
Teachings by Jesus.
Where did this
Let
is
me just say parenthetically, try getting a website with the word Jesus in it. Try getting
I
a
can't even imagine.
you cannot. I was amazed that my dear friend was able to get that for me.
Yeah. So where did this information come from? Was this source teachings from Jesus? Was this channeled through your guide?
Yeah, he took me to meet Jesus in the astral plane. I cannot tell you what an astonishing experience that was. I'm still been flabbergasted by it. I spent the summer of 2022 many evenings because of course, what happens at night. Our bodies sleep.
We leave.
We go off because we don't have to sleep. And so what Thomas does for Jesus is something which nobody else really feels they have the right to do, which is to just be normal around him because he has he spent the last 1700 years, Jesus did, healing people. There are healing gardens all around the afterlife and the astral for people who have been damaged in life.
And
And
the you said that word, and Roberta, I have said the same thing so many times the last several months is my concern when we're trying to heal the planet is that humans are so damaged.
well, they are. And one of the great sources of damage has been Christianity. I mean, think of the Inquisitions, think of the Crusades, think of even the churches.
Well, and I think that filters out judgment into daily life and othering people. We're these people, those are those people. In the words, those what is taught in the churches through the control and the misinformation is what leaks out into the world around us, and it does not create harmony.
It's horrible. It's really horrible. There are hundreds of millions of people that Jesus has worked to heal just with love because and of course all these people have been physically healed. Think of all the people that during the Middle Ages, during the Crusades, during all of that, were tortured to death, burned to death at the stake. All those people, their bodies are fine now. They have beautiful, normal bodies in the astral, but their minds need healing with love. And Jesus has done all that healing himself for 1700 years. He's only coming out of it now. And all the love that he has given to those people has raised his own vibration to an extent that is far above even the Godhead level. I would not have thought that was possible. But Thomas tells me, yes, he's far above where he was in terms of spiritual growth. Even when he came to the earth as Jesus, he is extraordinary. And I have met him, and you cannot get near him.
That's what I've heard, that you can't, you just have to keep back. It's just too much.
He has to very deliberately tone it down. If he
Mhm.
remembers to tone it down, you can get near him. But he has to remember that. It is so overwhelming. And it's like hearing but just on an energy level, it's like a very high operatic note. There are no low notes at all, just a very high operatic note. It's
Yeah.
overwhelming. It really is. And yet he has imagined someone with no sense of self at all, no ego. The only thing he wants to do is talk about you. How was your day? What did you do? Tell me about your day. He just wants to know about you. I've never known anybody like that. And I spent what because we were working on that website, I spent one whole summer knowing Jesus, getting to know him. And he's not
How did,
tall. Because you choose how you want to look. He presents as like 8 inches tall with a not really brown, sort of olive complexion, brown eyes, dark brown eyes.
is that the image on the website?
Yes, except that his hair is shorter and curly. We couldn't find a shorter hair, so we
Yeah.
gave.
I'll go ahead and have my editor add that right now so people can see it. And you can go over to the website as well. This has been fascinating, Roberta. I don't want to take up the rest of your day. What I'd like to do, with your permission, is have you come back because I would love for you to really, if you're open to it, share with us the highlights of what you learned over that summer with Jesus, what you would like humanity to be able to know and embrace. And then we can just have a discussion more about it. Does that
Yeah,
work for
I
you?
would love to tell you. I mean, he has said I can talk about him, or I wouldn't talk about him.
Hmm.
He wants the world to know him. But the thing I don't understand is if there were anybody in the world who could be a big shot, it's him, and yet he has no ego at all.
Well, that's because he is who he is. He's beyond that.
He's
Yeah.
way beyond that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he's interested in you. He just wants to know about you. Tell me about your day. What did you do today?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Feels very
And I did
loving.
nothing that was worth his hearing about it.
That must have been an extraordinary experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing, you just want to do whatever he wants you to do, but he just wants to know how he can make you happy. That's it.
Yeah.
What a beautiful man. You just want to do. But he wants to be short. He doesn't want to be tall. He welcomes everybody. He makes it a point to welcome everybody who wants to know him personally into the afterlife. And so, many people are much taller than he is. And so he just thinks that's sort of, he smiles at them. Oh, look how tall you are. And oh, shakes their hand. Oh, oh my goodness. Totally no ego at all.
Mhm.
What a
Yeah.
beautiful man.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you for
you,
asking about Jesus.
well, isn't that what we're all here for, to kind of ascend to a little higher place?
But
I,
many people just want their image of Jesus, which is so old and archaic, and really the religious image is so sad.
well, you know what I'm interested in? I'm interested in the frequency of Jesus, that frequency of love. And what I have heard, and you may feel differently, but I've heard that working within the Jesus frequency is a choice that you can make in the afterlife, because we get to choose what we do.
Oh yes, you can work with Jesus.
Yeah,
Yes.
so it's like you can choose to work in the Jesus frequency and help to spread that through humanity and around the cosmos. I would expect. This is not the only Earth is not the
He
only
is
game in
just
town.
he is just coming out of this zone where he has had to be just healing people. He's only now figuring out just how he wants to do it. So yes, I think he is assembling his workers.
Well, this has been fascinating. Promise me you'll come back.
I will. I'm delighted.
Okay. Well, and what we'll do next time for those listening is we'll talk a little bit. We'll have Roberta talk about what for her are the greatest lessons that she's learned, and the things that she feel like Jesus would really like all of us to integrate into our lives. Does that work for you?
I'll ask. I'll ask because even though I'm usually not allowed to remember when I'm there, I'm there most nights.
Yeah.
So yes,
Wonderful.
I'll ask them what I should tell you.
Okay, this has been a fascinating conversation. I loved every minute of it. Spending time with you has just been such a gift. Thank you for that.
No, I've just had
And
a delightful time too. So thank you, dear.
yeah, and we will see you soon. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Bye now.
Bye bye.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Coming up next, this is a good one, or you might really like this one too. Either one of them could be perfect for you. Before you leave, don't forget to subscribe.